Hello, business happy hour fam. I've got some juice for you today. I'm going to take you BTS, behind the scenes. Okay. In January of 24, depending on when you're listening to this episode, hopefully right when it comes out. But if you're binging and you're like, oh my gosh, it's so far in the future, this will still be relevant. I mean, unless the entire internet just is entirely changed by then. But I want to take you behind the scenes of if you're following me on social media, you probably saw that I did a quiz. Now, it's kind of funny because when I first started in business, my nutrition business, one of the very first things I ever did was a quiz to build my email list. So literally I just like feel like I've come full circle. And at the time I used a platform called Try Interact, which still exists. And I actually started to build this quiz on Try Interact. However, I came across something much better. Now, when I first started my business, and I think, what was my first quiz called? I think it was like, what kind of dieter are you? And then the options were like, all or nothing mentality, whatever it is. And it was so interesting how quickly this grew my email list. Now, it was my first freebie, right? So you can essentially utilize a quiz as a freebie, right? I always encourage you to check the intention behind why you're doing something. I don't want you to go create a quiz because it's like, oh, Lauren makes X amount of money and she did a quiz, so I'm going to do a quiz, right? Like that just, I used to do that shit and it doesn't serve anybody, okay? It's just going to leave you burnt out and exhausted if there's no intentionality behind what you're actually doing. So, what I want you to think about, what I thought about when I created this quiz was for my audience at the time, they're very type A. They are looking for solutions, right? I mean, pretty much everyone's audience is looking for a solution in one way, shape, or form. But what is that solution they're looking for? And what do they need to realize before they're able to understand what the solution is, right? So it's really for that problem, for that unaware buyer, the buyer that's like, I know I'm struggling with this thing, but like, I don't really know what the solution is. So sorry, it's more of a problem aware buyer. So they know they have a problem, but they're not quite sure what the solution is. Okay. Or maybe they haven't really like named their problem. They just know like, I don't know, I'm just sitting in shit and this is a terrible time in my life, but they're like, I don't really know what's wrong with me. We need to get them aware of that. Okay? So, an example I'm going to give you the business example and also the nutrition example. So, for nutrition, if I was doing the what kind of dieter are you, I would ask certain questions along the lines of like, I go out to dinner and then there would be like a few answers that were different scenarios. So, and I look for the healthiest thing on the menu and my dressing on and ask for my dressing on the side. I ask them to roast my vegetables rather than fry them, whatever it is. Or I go out to dinner and I feel incredible and mentally I know that I can order anything without feeling guilty, right? So it would like each response would essentially facilitate a certain end goal answer. So it could be like, oh, you're the all or nothing eater, you're the food freedom rock star, whatever it is, and would lead them to different places. So at the end of that quiz, I was able to help them find clarity around, okay, this is the thing you actually need to work on, right? Now, for business, I started to notice in my audience that a big thing was people didn't really know where to go in terms of my product suite. So I have different levels of programs for different levels of entrepreneurs. And one thing in terms of marketing and sales is like if you're confused, your audience is going to be confused. Now, I wasn't confused, but I wasn't properly conveying where people needed to go based on what they were qualifying for, if that makes sense. So I needed to be more clear in terms of qualifiers for each particular program. So I wanted people to qualify themselves. And honestly, a big portion of this was market research for me because I was like, where is most of my audience sitting? are most of my people wanting to scale their business? They're posting constant content consistently. They understand how to make sales from their content. Or are they really struggling with the content aspect? They really want to get more clients from social media, right? Those were kind of my two buckets. So I was like, let's make a freaking quiz and let's find the data out for ourselves. Okay. So started making it on Try Interact. And I actually came across, so one of the masterminds I was in, I had connected with one of the ladies inside, and she's incredible. Her name's Jody. And she had talked about in our mastermind how she was going to create a course on ManyChat, MANY chat. So ManyChat is an incredible resource. It's very cool. But basically, anytime you get like an automated response from after you comment on someone's Instagram or you send them a DM, like chances are it's coming from ManyChat. Actually, it is coming from ManyChat. I mean, to my knowledge, there's no other platform that does this. Maybe there's, I don't know. And so she actually said, I finished the course and it's gonna have a template for you in ManyChat. And you basically, it's going to show you how to make a quiz in ManyChat. Everything's all set up for you. All you have to do is plug in your questions. And I'm like, path of least resistance. Let's fucking go, baby. I'm in, bought it. Best thing I ever did. So if you want access to her course and are thinking about making a quiz, highly recommend. I will put the link to it in the show notes. Like I was able to put this thing together in like 2 freaking seconds, not even kidding. Once I had the questions and everything, like actually plugging it into the platform was so easy. So if you want that, just head to the show notes and the link for you will be right in there. So I got this quiz, this course, and I wrote out my questions. And honestly, the hardest part about creating a quiz is coming up with the questions. So it's coming up with like, okay, the end goal is to, and I honestly worked backwards. So I worked backwards and I said, okay, so I want them to come into one of these 2 camps. Either they need more inquiries or they need to scale. They need less calls on their calendar, right? So it's basically the person that's like, I literally will do all of the work. I want as many calls on my calendar. I want all the clients. And then there's the person that's had that and they're like, no, I need less calls on my calendar. I don't want to do this. I want to scale, right? I want to make more money, but I want to decrease the amount of time that's spent in the business, and that's scaling. Okay. So I was like, okay, based on these 2 things, what differentiates A, the person that needs more inquiries, from B, the person that wants to scale? And I came up with questions based on that. So if you want, you can DM, if you haven't taken the quiz and you want to see how it works, you can just DM me quiz and it'll pop up for you. And it was so insightful for me to see that a lot of you guys are more so in camp A, where you really need to hone in on your messaging and your marketing to get more inquiries via social media. So that was great data for me. Then, again, like a little sneak peek inside of my brain, I was like, okay, we don't want this to just like be a quiz and then fall flat. Like, we're not just looking for data here. Like, you're capturing someone's attention. I mean, we need to utilize that attention. We need to send them somewhere, right? So I decided to position it as, okay, you just took this quiz. Here's your results. If you want to work on this result, and I had 2, again, like either the person that needed more inquiries or wanted to scale, and I gave them a name. So it was like, you're the demand desirer, you want more demand, and then scaling, you're the scaling superstar, you are, or at least almost, I wrote, right? Like they wanted to scale their business. So I was like, okay, we could go many routes with this. We could go, here's your free guide to help you scale. Here's your free guide to help you create content that increases the amount of inquiries that you get, or how to create content that sells, right? But ultimately, I was like, video and audio convert best. So ultimately, that's what we want to be using. If there is anywhere that you have a guide or something that people can't see you, they can't hear you talk, they can't hear the tone or inflection in your voice, we want to increase that. It's going to build trust 10 times faster. Honestly, maybe more than that. 10 times faster is not a true analytic. I just know it increases trust that much faster. Okay. It honestly might be more than 10 times. Now, with that being said, it doesn't mean like if you have a guide or something, it doesn't mean like burn it all to the ground, like go make a training out of it, whatever it is. You can incorporate audio and video in many different ways. Like, for example, I have my Instagram marketing, my money making. I always get tripped up with the name, which is, I'm like, why did I name it this? I can't even say it. Money making Instagram marketing guide. And I'll drop that in the show notes as well for you if that's something that you're interested in. It's a great place to start if you're wanting to understand how to sell via your content and even more advanced, like how to appeal to certain buyer types and the different buyers that are in your audience. So it's $97, totally worth it. It's incredible. You can access that in the show notes as well. But for that, I was like, I want there to be visuals for this, but I don't want it to be a masterclass. I want it to be super easy to consume, but I want them to hear the inflection in my voice. I want them to see me. I want that, right? So I was like, okay, how can we do this? So I actually ended up calling it a video. What did I call it? It's like video done for you video guide or something. And basically all I did is I injected one video training and it just tells you how to utilize the guide. So you get the guide and then it says like next steps. Okay, you're going to go through the guide and then in order to utilize the guide best, head over to this YouTube video. I'll walk you through it and then you can hit the ground running, right? So simple little things. There could be one tiny little thing that you add in. Maybe you have a podcast, link your podcast to your guide just so that it's like, hey, you finished the guide? Come follow me here. Listen to this episode. If you're struggling with this, this is what I would recommend, right? We want to increase consumption from your audience because it's going to build trust faster. I mean, heck, even if like right now you're listening to this and you're like, okay, yeah, I want to increase trust in my audience and I haven't, there's not much that I have that has my voice or whatever it is, like literally go on your stories right now. If you have a podcast, if you have a free training, if you have anything, go on your stories and link it. Be like, hey, if you're like, I could do this right now where I'm like, hey, I just recorded a few podcast episodes and I want to guide you in the right direction based on where you're at. If you're struggling with content, listen to this episode. If you're struggling with sales, listen to this episode. If you're struggling with marketing, listen to this episode. And I definitely recommend getting more specific than that. I'm just like riffing off here, but specificity and tangibility is a huge thing here. So definitely be more specific. But just as an example, a great, great, great way to warm up your audience. Okay. I love tangents, clearly. But hopefully that was helpful. So a little recap. Creating the quiz, I used ManyChat. I came up with the questions basically backwards based on where I wanted the ultimate end result to be. I would say you can have 2 to 3 end results. I wouldn't have more than 3. You're gonna overcomplicate. It's gonna be too confusing for you. For anybody, it's just a lot to have that many routes in your quiz, and you'll see if you do the ManyChat. And I just did 2 because I was like, those are the 2 routes in my business. It's just what makes the most sense. So you're going to come up with those routes. You're going to come up with the questions, and then your quiz gets to go live. Now, I personally ended up doing live masterclasses. That's where I led them. So actually, as I'm recording this, tonight is your new era of content, which was one of the options if people got the demand desirer. So tonight, I'm teaching people how can you create content that sells. And it's going to be amazing. I'm so excited. So excited. If you're listening to this, then obviously it's going to be after the fact and you want access to it. It's entirely free. So just send me a DM and let me know that you listened to this and that I mentioned the new era of content and you want access to it. Now, when we think about what you're going to offer at the end, like I said earlier, you want to make sure that it is something that will help them, like basically you've helped them realize, okay, this is my problem, right? Like what's the bottleneck? The bottleneck is the demand. They need to increase demand. Okay. Now I'm going to show them how they can further do this in through their content. So whatever you put at the end of your quiz as like the freebie or the next step, you want it to like be a real next step. Like, hey, this is where I recommend you go next. We've determined that this is your problem. Here's where I recommend you go next. And that's where you provide all the value to them. Okay. And then this is getting a little advanced. So if I'm overwhelming you, just take a deep breath, pause, and then come back to me. Or, let me know if you have any questions. But once you were signed up for New Era of Content, then I was like, okay, what's the next step from there? Right? It's like this it's like this ecosystem of, okay, we're here. Now what? We're here. Now what? Where are we guiding them? Okay. So after New Era of Content, I give a special opportunity to join Content Catalyst. And I'm like, hey, y'all, like, if you liked this, you're going to freaking love Content Catalyst. It is this like times 1 million. And I'll give a special deal for a certain period of time. And that's pretty much it. The quiz was really fun to run. And another really important note is that when you're promoting a quiz, you really have to think about like what's in it for them, right? You have to promote it. Like just because I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that I see. I mean, there's a lot, and I probably say that all the time, but one of the biggest mistakes I see is that when something is free, or when something like a quiz, I mean, that's also free, right? So anytime that there's something free, essentially, I see people with this kind of like entitlement of like, it's free. Why aren't people signing up? And the number one thing that I want to tell you is that every time I sell something, whether it's free or it's $10,000, I sell it the same freaking way. I have for the past week, I've been doing open public enrollment for your New Era of Content, and I have sold that thing as if it was $1 million. I mean, it should be with the content inside. It's going to be amazing. But I I used to, but I don't anymore. I don't get complacent or feel entitled to anybody joining anything. I show up every single day as if nobody knows who I am. As if nobody's joined my programs, nobody knows what the value is going to be. I basically start from scratch and I'm like, what do they need to know about this offer? How is it going to help them? What do they need to realize in order to join me? What are things that I need to guide them through? And that's how I market it. So, although a quiz is free, I highly recommend not saying, why aren't people taking this? It's freaking free. You need to communicate the value because in the past that might have worked where it's like, ooh, free shit. But there's free shit all over the online space now. So we need to communicate why should people do this? And honestly, I would say that you need to communicate it even further because there's so many beliefs that if it's free, it's not valuable because they've been in shit that's free before that was trash. And people are so protective of their emails now because they're like, I literally can't stand to get one more freaking email. So we actually need to sell it even harder because something they pay for, it's like, well, I'm paying for this. It better be worth it, right? Like I know it's going to be worth it. Whereas something free, we actually have to sell it even harder. So with a quiz, I actually, a lot of the times when I was quote unquote selling it, I would say I would say like the resources at the end ultimately. So you can talk about here are the results that you can get. You can get this or this, and here's ultimately where it's going to lead you, right? I would also say like it's gonna allow you to find clarity for you to finally feel like, oh my gosh, I know what I need to work on. Like, what would that be worth to you, right? So the marketing for a quiz is very different than honestly anything else. Okay. So if you would like to do a quiz, I would say one, it's a really great thing if you're like, I feel like I need to get a better grasp of my audience. I want to start conversations with people. That's the other thing with ManyChat that's super cool is the quiz happens entirely in your DMs. You don't have to do anything. It's facilitating it all for you. But nobody has to leave the platform in order to take the quiz. So the barrier to entry is extremely low and it's super, super easy for people to just go ahead, DM you, take the quiz, like easy, easy, easy peasy. Okay. So that's a really cool feature. The other thing with it being in the DMs is if you want to continue the conversation, you can very easily say like, "Hey, so thanks so much for taking the quiz. Like, I saw that you got this response. Like, typically I see this. What do you think about that? Is that something that you can relate to?" And like start the conversation, right? So there's so many opportunities that this quiz can bring. It can be market research for you. It can help you determine where your audience is at. It can guide your people in the right direction. It's going to make them feel like they have a place and a home in your world. And then you're going to position whatever the next step is as the solution. Okay. If you enjoyed this episode, I would love nothing more than for you to write a review, subscribe, give us 5 stars, all the things. I would so, 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 so appreciate it so that I can continue to give you guys all of the free stuff because I love it and it's so fun for me. And I will talk to you guys soon. Love you. Bye.